What's going on, everybody? You've got the cardboard coach here with your boy, Coach Co. And team, today we've got a very special guest on the podcast. And I know I say this a lot, but I really mean it this time. We've got Karvin Cheung, from former Upper Deck employee, the creator of one of the most iconic sets, if not the most iconic set, multiple, in the sports card hobby. And we'll get into those very, very quickly. How you doing today, Karvin?
Well, first, I'm doing really well, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you being here. I feel like I had to wear the Upper Deck hat because you're here. So you
Well,
are, well, go for it.
I said, Upper Deck means it's close to my heart, right? So, um, back in the day, like when I was collecting, obviously it was all OPG and Tops back in the day. When I was collecting in the 70s, and when Upper Deck came in '89 with the premium paper and the hologram and the double photographs, that got me completely back into the hobby. And at that point, I ran flea markets, got into become a retailer all throughout the majority of the '90s. So if it wasn't for Upper Deck, I probably wouldn't have gotten back in the hobby back in '89.
I feel like that's the case for a lot of people, but it holds especially true for you and like kind of the impact that you've had. It's pretty fitting that we're chatting this week. It's the 20th anniversary of Exquisite?
Yes, of Exquisite release week, yeah.
Okay, so spoiler alert, I guess, right off the bat, there you go. Karvin Cheung is the creator of Exquisite Basketball, and I thought it'd be very appropriate to bring him on a few days after we saw the most expensive Michael Jordan sale of all time take place. It took place for the Exquisite Logo Man out of 2003 Exquisite.
It was actually Ultimate.
Was Ultimate. Thank you very much for correcting me.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
Another creation of yours, though.
Not the name itself, because that was created in 2000 and 2001, but the product that was created in 0304 was created by, like, I worked on that.
Okay.
I'm the architect of that product.
Yeah, we're good. So, I mean, we can put as many asterisks in here as possible, but you had your hands in two of the most iconic sets of all time, including the most expensive Michael Jordan sale ever. So that sale took place for $2.9 million, a little bit more than $2.9 million, closed on Sunday, I believe, through Golden Auctions. A massive sale, especially for a non-rookie card. Logo Man they've become such a staple in the hobby. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about what it was like creating those sets? So where did that come from, man? Like,
well,
bring me back to like 2001, 2002.
Sure. I mean, obviously, listening to a lot of my podcasts and interviews, I got stories from forever, right? So for the 9 to 10 years that I worked at Upper Deck, and then that, I followed that up with a little bit of a sabbatical, and then worked for Panini for 3 years. But with that being said, the Logo Man idea, I remember seeing a card that had half a Logo Man, I think. And I believe it was on the 97-98 Michael Jordan. That was not the autograph one, or maybe it's the autograph one that had two halves of the Logo Man. So back in 2002, I actually had weekly calls with the NBA. I said, "Hey, can you get an approval for us to do a Logo Man card?" And lo and behold, they went and checked with their lawyers and all that, and they said, "Yeah, you can do it as long as you don't cut it. We want it in whole." Because most companies would want their logos intact, as long as they give you the image rights to show it. A lot of times, other logos, people will cut it in half so that if it's not intact, there's going to be IP issues. So that way you get around that. But with the NBA, I want to showcase that whole Logo Man. It's so cool knowing that it's Jerry West and the history of that.
Yeah.
So they approved it, and in 02-03, I actually debuted the first ever Logo Man card in 02 and 03 in Upper Deck Series 2. And that card has been sold through Golden. It was called Logo Mania. And there was only 3 cards. There was the spokesman cards. At that time in 2002, we had Jay Williams as one of our spokesmen, the player that played for Duke and then later got injured, and now he's he's a commentator, or he had his own podcast and on ESPN. And then we had Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. So Exquisite was not in the works at that point. Exquisite only became a project in the works when we signed LeBron James. And in 2002, when he was on the first, I believe he was the first high school cover on SI called The Chosen One. And he had that little pout and, his finger pointing. And I said, man, this is the guy we have to get. At that point, once we got him and we knew the impact of what LeBron James is, that when we finally decided, hey, let's do something on a much more higher end scale. And that was Exquisite. So to note, a lot of people will know me for a lot of my products. In Exquisite, there is no single logomans in Exquisite. There's duals, there's triples, there's signed duals. That is the staple of what Exquisite is. The single logomans, whether it's a rookie logoman or rookie logoman, rookie card, RPA, or whether it's a veteran, all the singles are all in Ultimate. And primary reason for that was, the one thing that we're really faced with is that we're worried about the higher end products cannibalizing everything. So you try to leave certain key elements and key drivers in every single set. And we felt that at that point was saying, hey, Ultimate, and also Cup Hockey for that matter, when we did Cup Hockey in 0506, we left it as the single shield, single logo man, only in Ultimate, so that the biggest card of the year would actually be an Ultimate and not Exquisite.
That is really cool, and especially how you mentioned making sure that they don't cannibalize other sets. I think that's something that almost gets lost nowadays with like
It
a bit of
does.
oversaturation. Do you know what I mean? There's there's so many different one of ones, and it's like the same but different. There's like no boundaries anymore. It's very interesting that you guys had pretty stark ones back then, or at least you did.
Well, I mean, the one-on-one argument is always going to be, there's 100 one-on-ones, there's 200 one-on-ones. I think, if you want to have one-on-ones, there's certain products that make sense where you have multiple one-on-ones, and that is kind of the allure of that product. But if you make one-on-ones in every single product, then it's overdone. Then a one-on-one doesn't have a lot of value then anymore in those products. So, you always have to be cautious of that. Is that while you want more people to rip the product and you want to sell more product up front, you also got to be cautious on the secondary market, how the collectors and the player collectors are going to view those cards and how valuable those are down the road.
It's interesting you brought up the collector. Talk to me about how important the collector was, or understanding your collector was, when you were building out some of these sets and working for these big companies.
Well, it's the most important thing. So in the 90s, it's interesting when I took on this job at Upper Deck. The one thing that I know is I paid a huge tuition fee, and my tuition fee in the 90s was ripping cases. I paid the price for ripping. I probably ripped close to at least $500,000 worth of product in the 90s. So when you're looking at about $500-600 a case, that's a lot of cases, right? Not only that, I also basically dealt with a lot of the high-end, case breakers, what people call whales, which is, I think, a terminology we shouldn't use for our collectors, right? The high-end case breakers, or, our collectors, our customers. In going to them, I was like Uber for cards. So I would get a call, like I'd always have like cases of cards in the back of in my trunk or in my van. And I get a call at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's like, hey, I'm in Orangeville, and you being in Toronto, you know where Orangeville is.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, is there Denny's close by or Perkins? So we go up there. I meet them at 2:30 in the morning, and they'll rip till 6 in the morning. And I actually, I'll help them rip, or I watch them rip, and that really gives me the feeling of euphoria, the rush of when you're opening boxes and cases of cards. And I think having that experience really helped me define my role in the hobby and developing ideas. So ultimately, no matter what you look at on a card, it's the aesthetics of the card that matters the most. How nice the design is. And some people will say that, some of the Exquisite cards or some of the Ultimate cards or Cup cards, they'll say, man, Karvin, those cards are really minimalistic. That was designed that way. Because at the end of the day, if there's a patch, there's an autograph, you really don't want to over design it and clutter the card. You want to showcase the autographs. You want to showcase the patches. Now, if the guy has a give up autograph, well, I can't control that, right? So to a certain point, if I can plan for that and know which guys have initial autograph versus an autograph like Sidney Crosby, then I'll design it purposely for that. But that's kind of difficult to determine upfront and across the board because that costs a lot of money and a lot of time. But with that being said, the aesthetics of the card means the most because you could drive a Ferrari, but if the Ferrari is made out of sheet metal and it's rusted and all this stuff, then you're like, I don't want this Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
So even if it's worth a lot of money, right? To the big collectors, it's not about money. It's about enjoying what they have, and really clearly making the card aesthetics is the most important thing. So that to me, so the customers, the end collector, are always the most important people. Whether they open boxes, they open cases, or they don't, and they buy singles, because the fact that they're bidding against each other and they're raising their prices in the secondary market, that's the end all be all. That's the most important people. So you got to clearly define when you're building a product, whether it's a product like, let's say, O-Pee-Chee, or a product like Cup, or let's say a product like Upper Deck Regular, Victory, or Exquisite. You got to define what your demographic is, and understand what they want, what they potentially, kind of guide them to a way that you see them, hey, here's some grail cards, maybe you'll like these cards, and hopefully you can guide the direction or give them some direction to which cards are cool, which cards are the aesthetics. And at that point, you gotta treat them with, kind of like kids in a sense, just with gloves, and say, hey, you know what, maybe these are the cards you'd want. And also getting feedback ahead of time, not necessarily on feedback what did well or what didn't do well, what they like to see, potentially other cards that they've seen in the past, and then also engaging them and telling them, hey, this is what we have down the road, and maybe you'll like these. So giving them a little bit of a preview, pulling back the curtains.
That's awesome. How
Yeah.
do you feel personally about like the non-game use stuff? I mean, we're starting to see a lot of that, especially out of like Panini and even like sticker autos. There tends to be like a bit of a a negative connotation towards both of those things. Like, talk to me a little bit
Right.
about that, especially when it comes to like some of those higher end products. Like, was that something you had to deal with as well? How did you
Mhm.
combat stuff like that?
So let's deal with one item at a time.
Cool.
Let's
Let's do
let's,
it.
let's start with sticker autographs. I remember seeing the first sticker autographs, and at the time when I went in to work for Upper Deck, we actually didn't use sticker autographs, but we actually had like what we call trapped autos. So it was a cutout window. It could be an Avery label that was signed underneath it. It could be uh, what they call like on a big sheet of paper, they sign grids. So like, for example, like my first product was Sweet Shot Basketball. It was a dimpled orange paper that they signed in bulk. Like it was a big sheet with like 20 of them on there, and they cut them out, and then they trap them. So those are other ways of acquiring autographs ahead of time and making sure that these guys sign their autographs. Obviously, back in the 2000, it was a little bit easier at obtaining the autographs from the athletes than it is today. And with the control that the teams have and the money that's involved, their signing times are really cut short, right? So back then, when the idea of stickers came on, I said, dudes, I don't like stickers.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of stickers, right? In fact, it was basically, I said, I refused to put stickers. And they said, well, Karvin, you have to get with the program, or we're going to walk you out the door. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, I better get on the program with stickers, right? And then I understand the context of stickers and how it makes it easier. We obtain them up front, and no matter what, I'd love to deliver a product that's high quality and all hard sign autographs. So what we did at Upper Deck at the time was that we said, hey, let's define which products are hard sign and which products have stickers. And the earlier products that are in the schedule, because due to the signing period time, we didn't have enough time, we would say these ones would have stickers. And then the future is the future products that are more higher end, like Cup and SPA or Exquisite, those would be the hard sign. Now, there are exceptions to the rules where we've actually used stickers in Exquisite. One exception is multiple signers. So having like guys sit down for like 3 of them, it's tough. So we may decide to use stickers. Other times it was like a one-time signing only. So I believe Scottie Pippen, he never signed forever, and he said he'll sign, but it's only one sitting only. So like, I don't have the design, I don't have the cards ready for Exquisite. So I said, well, let's get stickers signed and sticker them. At least it's better to have Scottie Pippen than not to have Scottie Pippen at that
Yeah.
point, right? So we had to make compromises. So there are times, it's a give and take, right? 90% of the company is all about designing the cards, hitting their deadlines, and getting the cards out on time. And the fact that, you know, the 10 to 20 people that are working in product development say, hey, we can't do this, and you're delaying revenue and you're delaying releases, well, you're impacting the business, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. You got to pick your battles, and stickers is part of it. Now, the one thing about stickers is that, you know, at the end of the day, stickers can be aesthetically pleasing too as well. It's how you do the design of the card. And at that point, you know, you got to work with your, you know, graphic designers and come up with ways that are unique, that stickers aren't as impactful or clear to the eye. So there's ways around it. You know, with every challenge in life or in challenge in building products, there's always solutions. It might not be exactly what you want. You know, like I like to drive a Ferrari too. I can't drive a Ferrari. I don't have the money for a Ferrari, so I gotta make this decision. Maybe I'll drive a Honda or an Acura or a Toyota or a Hyundai. It doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, there are wants that we have, and guess what? We have to compromise. And building products is the same way too.
It's awesome.
With the photo shoot versus game used.
Yeah.
So I think there's two elements that happened. So number one, even if it's photo shoot, I remember the first time I opened a pack of cards and I got a photo shoot jersey. I believe it was 98 football or 99 football, and it was a Fred Taylor. And I turned it over and it said photo shoot. Man, I'm like, man, I got a photo shoot jersey, right? So obviously it was an early product. This was Upper Deck 1. I don't even think the season started. So in your mind as a collector, you're like, man, I can't believe they don't have a game used, but yet they haven't even played a game yet.
Yeah.
So early products are impacted with photo shoot. And, you know, with photo shoot, you know, I attended my first photo shoot in 2002, because I started Upper Deck in 2001. And the first guy I had to do the photo shoot with was Julius Peppers. So this is humongous guy that's 6'6", cut like a rock, like yourself, coach. And you know, I was like, hey, Julius, I got you got to, you know, take off your jersey you're wearing, and I need you to put on these jerseys. And there's like, you know, 15 jerseys. And he goes, do you want me to pull them down? I go, of course you got to pull them down, dude. Like, you know, you can't just leave them around your neck.
Yeah.
He goes, okay. So he was like the gentle giant, like great experience for me to work with Julius Peppers. And after I saw, hey, these jerseys aren't even like his number or any of the stuff, is obviously Upper Deck didn't know the number. But the first things first, that the jerseys were what they call game ready jerseys. So these jerseys are actually the game jerseys the players wear, not replica jerseys that are produced for the fans. So they're the more expensive. They're the actual same patches.
Yeah.
Had it been the one with the number, the company could say, hey, this is a game used. You wouldn't even be able to tell it because it's the exact same cut, right? So that's the first thing I noticed. Number two, you know, the fact that I thought these were in photo shoot, like they were taking pictures in them. Yeah, two of those jerseys they were taking photos. The other ones were pretty much like just put them on and take them off. And I was like, kind of appalled. I was like, oh man, I can't believe, you know, all this. But at the end of the day, like, you know, when I look at it, I say, hey, you know what? This gets the product in June or in May. You have all the jerseys ready for you. You can cut them, you can produce them, you can put autographs on them, versus having to wait till their first game. And as you know, being a collector, like especially in hockey or even basketball, the rookies, they don't even get to touch the ice. They don't get to touch the court till maybe midway through the season. Sometimes they get sent down to the G League, they get sent down to the minors or, juniors in hockey. So basically you're allowing the team administrative, the GMs of the teams and the coaches to manage your business. You can't do that. So having the jerseys up front, ready to go, cut, put in product, once again, it doesn't impact deadlines. So there's where the acceptance level for me. It was like, okay, if it's a rookie, I can accept rookie photo shoot now. I can make the compromise in my mind, right? And then for the game use, ideally I would like game use for anybody after the first year.
Yeah.
Or if we can squeeze some game use into the rookie year, that'd be nice too. But with that being said, for me, like back like 20 years ago or even 15 years ago, there was game used, RPAs. But they don't sell for a lot because guess what? When you're cutting up a jersey that's game used, you're going to use the entire jersey. Whereas the number one area for most of the patches is the numbers. The numbers all have one color. So if you got a one color patch versus the 3 or 4 color patch, I think collectors, even though they say they want game use, What they really want is they want game use with 4-color patches across the board, right? Versus a game used 1-color patch versus
Yeah.
a photo
Yeah.
shoot 4-color patch,
Definitely
and
over a
that's where I
napkin
stand.
patch. Yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah. That's
So you have a hierarchy. You have a hierarchy of basically 4-color game use, 3-color game use, 2-color, 1-color game use versus 4-color. That 4-color photo shoot may actually go higher.
yeah.
So now we get into non-affiliated, non-player affiliated jersey and patches now. That's probably a product of COVID when there was no photo shoot. You didn't have access to the athletes. So because of that, I think some of the card companies will say, well, these are non-affiliated. They send out the jerseys and patches. And, once you start something, sometimes, the other people in the company will say, hey, this is easy. We can just buy the jersey. We don't
It's
have to send them out.
cheaper, you know what I
It's
mean? Like,
it's not really about a cost, and that's the one thing that people get into is like, oh, you're using a photo shoot jersey versus a game used jersey, you're making more money. No. So at the end of the day, this is what we're given as guys to create products. We're given basically our volume, our revenue for the product. Then we're giving a profit margin. Okay. So if I give them the profit margin, then I have to work with that profit margin. Whether I use a game used jersey or whether I use a photo shoot jersey, I still have to hit the same amount of margins. So let's say a photo shoot jersey, let's go back to 05-06 hockey, just because I knew the cost of everything. I was covering it. Migrate was a vendor back then for game used jerseys. So I was explaining to people like Henrik Lundqvist. Henrik Lundqvist numbered to 199. You would need probably for all the cards that you had, you probably need 5 game used jerseys. 5 game used jerseys at that time, they were going for $25,000 a piece. That's $125,000 you're spending on Henrik Lundqvist, not Sidney Crosby, not Ovechkin. If I have 5 photo shoot jersey, it cost me $1,000. I save not the company I saved the company $124,000. But that actually allows me to put way more other content into the product for the cup in 05-06 versus having to spend all that money and just say, hey, guess what? You got just an RPA Henrik Lundqvist, and that's all you got. So that's, just don't just take Henrik Lundqvist, but take 20 players like that. They're looking at $2 million just for game used jerseys. And at that point, people are going to complain about 1-color patches still.
yeah.
So you got to look at it.
And the price of products, right?
Right. Well, the price of the product would remain the same. So if it's equally the same at $350 a box back then, you're just getting the 1 card with a base card, and that's it. Versus, a cup pack at that time was at least 4 to 5 cards, where it's a base card, an RPA, an autograph patch, and then another auto or another, patch card inside it. So it's like 4 to 5 cards, and everyone was happy with the content. You're not going to be able to afford the so many Gretzky autographs to put into it, or Jordan autographs, and exquisite. So you got to be careful what you wish for, is what I always tell collectors. You can be wishful for that, and you're thinking that the card companies make a lot of money, but we actually have a guideline to follow, like a profit margin, the profit percentage, and all that to follow. And whether the product is, the revenue is millions of dollars and the profits, they don't allow us to go down in profit. So the more money you put into jerseys, you got to take it from somewhere else.
That's really interesting. You've mentioned the designs a lot, and I love that because, like, obviously collectors, and you said this, specifically with like collectors in mind, but do you want to talk a little bit about how you decided which designs to use? Like, I know that you said with collectors in mind, but like, where does that stuff come from? Like, did you have like a creative process? Was it like just asking the general public? Like, where did some of those ideas come from?
So you got to be careful when you ask the general public. Now, today, when I talk to people about Exquisite or Cup, they're like, oh, that was easy back then. No, it wasn't. When Exquisite first came out, it was a $500 per pack product. And I started actually about $1,500 a pack with some other type of hits. And then I lowered it down to 500 to be, a little bit more easier to sell in. So at $500 a pack, I mean, it was a 3-month discussion in board meetings, and then finally we got the approval to do so. I had multiple like store feedback panels, and I went to New Jersey to basically talk about products with about 6 impactful stores in New Jersey, and all of them roasted me for Exquisite. Like, you're ridiculous. You're insane. This is the most sorriest idea we ever heard at $500 a pack. I said, well, this is what you get. They're like, no, it's going to be a big bomb, right? And if you see those people today, they'll tell you yeah, we roasted Karvin badly, like, and everyone said that. Now today, because after Exquisite, you've seen a lot of other products that are higher end and even higher than 500 and up to like 5,000 or $30,000 a box, and it's done well. Well,
Yeah.
that's because that's a product of what happened back 20 years ago, right? If it wasn't for Exquisite, I don't know, we would be there. We might be there. I don't know. I just can't say it is. So at that time, it was met with a lot of people like skeptical, right? At that time, also, when I built it, I was like, hey, we got the LeBron rookie year. We don't have LeBron in the second year. We have Dwight Howard as the rookie in the second year. And the third year was Chris Paul. And I was like, well, this is a one-time thing. That was in what was in my mind. It's like, hey, we got a chance to hit this and hit this hard with LeBron, Carmelo, Chris Bosh, all these, D Wade, all these
Yeah.
big rookies.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure it's going to happen again. Obviously, it wasn't even the calendar. And the second year, finally, I said, well, why don't we just bring Exquisite back? And they're like, oh, are you serious, Karvin? You think this is going to work again? I'm like, yeah, I think it can work. And we actually kind of did it as a stealth launch. We didn't even announce it till like a month before it released. And then the whole hobby erupted. They're like, oh, thank God it's back and all that. So at that time, they thought it was just ultimate, and that was the highest end. So we're always skeptical of the product. Even myself, like, I can't say that I'm 100% confident that it's going to work always. I always doubt myself and challenge myself. And at that time, like, everyone thinks, oh yeah, Michael Jordan autographs. Yeah, there was a lot of Michael Jordan autographs, but Michael Jordan autographs were selling for $250 a piece at that time
Yeah.
when Exquisite hit. So it was no guarantee that $500 a pack that people felt like, oh, I did well in the case was I hit a Michael Jordan autograph. So it's tough to say that it's going to happen again. So the way that I look at designing products and when I create the products is that, okay, what's the price point first and foremost? What are the key elements of the set? And looking at the demographic, what type of things that demographic like? Not necessarily just in cards, but in everything else that they buy. So you gotta really study the demographics and see, what kind of buying habits, what do they collect, and even outside of cards, it could be watches, it could be sports cars, or just cars in general, luxury brands. So there's a lot of elements that I kind of study, and even then, in 03, 04, 04, 05, I was building like 70 products a year because I was working on, especially 05, 06, I was working on basketball, I was working on hockey, I was working on golf. So I had like my hands full with a lot of different products. So it's like every week I had to finish a product and move on to the next one, or even sometimes 2 or 3 a week and get it done and move on. You didn't have a lot of time. So some of the products were like, I didn't give enough attention to, and I felt that I gave too much attention to other products, and didn't study the demographics or come up with key drivers or key ideas. But overall, in the body of work, obviously I'm remembered for a lot of the luxury brands, but some of the brands that didn't do well is some of the ones I liked the most. Some of the ideas behind it, I love some of the ideas that just thinking that I'm living in this house that I'm in now, in my backyard. And I remember some of the ideas where I'm just, man, I'm going to sleep and trying to come up with ideas, and that's it. Something clicked in my mind, and I came up with something unique. And it's interesting how collectors pick up on this. Some of the collectors pick up on it, some of the collectors don't, and they'll say it's a stupid idea. But some of the other collectors, they'll think it's a genius idea. So, like, for example, the Golden, the Ultimate. Whether it's Kenny or whether it's the consignment directors, they picked up on the fact that Exquisite doesn't have single logo man. So Kenny pointed that out in his sell pitch for about the Ultimate Logo Man. That Ultimate is the only product that has single logo mans, and he was right.
I love
So,
that. What's
yeah.
one product you think you didn't give enough attention to, and that if you could go back and really give it the love, what would it be?
I think in basketball and hockey, when I worked on both sports, it's almost like the extremes, right? You have the high end collector in basketball, and then hockey is all about set collecting, community. It's completely different. And I think I try to have driving, like the lower end products are always going to be tough because those are retail focused. So products like Upper Deck Series 1 or Upper Deck Series 1 in basketball, it's always challenging. I try to get drivers, and the collectors in basketball don't care for Series 1 basketball, right? So in hockey, like MVP, Victory, all those, But even in 0506, I did a Victory Black Parallel out of 5. And believe it or not, if you find like one of the key guys, like an Ovechkin rookie or a Crosby rookie, those goes for tens of thousands of dollars. So there are cards today that were created back then that have no auto, no mem, because it kind of switched back in the, I guess about 10 years ago. Roughly about 10 years ago, people started, oh, I like PMGs, I like all these different inserts, and some of these, the black parallels that have nothing on them, no patch, no auto, they go for a lot of money. In fact, I get into arguments with people that they feel the rookie logo man from Ultimate 0304 Ultimate, the same one that this Michael Jordan came out of LeBron James, the vertical one, they think that card is on par only with the exquisite black 101 that Nat Turner owns, which has nothing on there, no autograph, no patch. So I was like, because a lot of collectors rather have that card because they don't care about the auto or patch versus the logo man. For me, I'd rather have the logo man. So because it's not a parallel. And I know there's a lot of people that like parallels like PMGs and rubies and all that, but for me, just the aesthetics of the autograph and the logo man patch makes a difference for me.
I think the patch auto for me too, man. Like the parallels are nice, but it's just something that the fact that that person was involved, especially when you're talking about like hard sign stuff, and I mean we're talking about game used and even event used. I mean that person literally had to wear that. So and if you're talking about a nice patch, there's so many different elements to like a nice patch auto versus like a well-known parallel. I mean I would much prefer the patch auto. That's me.
I'm in agreement with you, but I did rip a lot of product in the '90s for those PMGs and the Ruby, so I know the chase of that. I mean, and everyone thinks that those PMGs are so easy to hit. They're not, because I went through probably 20, 30 cases of Metal Universe, and I hit 2 reds or 2 rubies. So
Really?
there were hard hits, yeah, and they were not expensive boxes. They were like $45 a box at the time, I think. So you're looking at $800 a case, but man, there was a lot of bad cases.
Think about how much money you saved ripping in the 90s versus now.
That is true. The money that I saved was when I was working at Upper Deck and Panini. I didn't buy any cases or boxes. I got to rip a sample box here and there, or check the cases and then give the cards back to the printing facility. I mean, that was part of our fun. Unfortunately, I wasn't into cards. If I was, maybe I owned a couple of nice cards, but I only bought like Toronto Raptors and Maple Leafs just because I was a fan of Toronto. But outside of that, I mean, I wish I kept searching for those Crosby RPAs, Ovechkin RPAs, and LeBron RPAs, and I'd probably be in a much more nicer place than here. But unfortunately, no, I didn't. When you're, it's interesting. The first time I walked into the printing facility at Upper Deck and I saw all the jerseys being made and all the different patches, the 4-color, the 5-color patches, and the autos. I saw so much of it. It was just sensory overload, and to a point where I didn't really appreciate it anymore, I think, and that was the problem. So I was like, I've seen it all. So when people show me,
it's almost like a cook not being able to cook at home, like, or a chef not being able to cook
right,
at home, where it's like you're like desensitized. You're like, I just
it
don't.
is.
It's hard.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I got out of the office, I was like, I'd rather have a few beers and talk about other stuff than trading cards. And when I got with collectors, that's all they want to do is like, oh man, Karvin, tell me about this, tell me about that. I'm like, man, I'm not really enjoying this conversation. I'd rather talk about the latest movie that came out, or something else besides. I don't mind watching sports. I'd rather talk about sports than actual talking about trading cards, because I mean, it's my job to be
Yeah.
involved. So to a
Yeah.
certain point, you got desensitized to it. And what's interesting about my time at Upper Deck is I'm on the West Coast. I probably watched less sports while working at Upper Deck than I ever did, because I didn't have the free time. I was working until 7 o'clock, and by that time, the Leafs and the Raptors and the Blue Jays, they're already finished.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of time to really even enjoy sports, like playoff. Thank God we didn't have no playoffs, I guess, for the Maple Leafs for many years. So maybe that helped attribute to me creating nicer products.
There you go. We have the failure of the Maple Leafs to thank for all this.
Yeah,
for the cup.
yeah, for the cup, exactly. Well, they made it to the. You know what's interesting is that after the lockout year in 03 or 04,
Yeah,
they didn't make it. They didn't even make it to the playoffs till the next lockout where they had to shorten season when they played against
2011, I
the
think, 12.
2000, no, is it 12, 12, 13, I think.
12, yeah.
12-13 when they lost the 3-0 game to Boston. They lost in 4-3.
Yeah.
I was working at Panini at the time. I was like, man, this whole entire decade we didn't even see any Maple Leafs in the playoffs, and they lost like that to Boston, and they continue to lose to Boston. So it's painful to be a Maple Leafs fan. I grew up in the 80s when it was the worst team of all time, and that period of time, it was like 03, 04, we had a chance. And I remember trading for Owen Nolan. I was like, oh yeah, this is it. They got through the first round, and the second round they got knocked out, and then after that lockout, that was it. And we made that trade, that Andrew Raycroft for Tuukka Rask trade.
Tuukka
I was like,
Rask.
oh yeah, that defined everything. So that was just it's been tough to swallow this year. Once again, the Raptors with the injuries to the players, and the Maple Leafs getting knocked out, and the Blue Jays. I don't know what's going on with the Blue Jays right now. So it's tough to be a
I
Toronto
mean,
fan.
team's just not good enough, I don't think. I mean, they didn't do anything in the offseason, and they had some serious issues last season. And they signed like Justin Turner, called it a day. They're like, yeah, we'll be fine. We'll run it back. I'm
Yeah,
like,
we went from watching planes in the sky with Shohei Ohtani to Justin
I
Turner
know,
and
I
and
know.
IKF. So
It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Ironically enough, I mean, if we had Shoei on the team, like he's got like probably like a 6 or 7 WAR, and he's not even pitching. He's the best
yeah,
hitter in baseball right now. So like the lineup would look dramatically different. I think they
yes.
just went all in and then had no backup plan, which I guess sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, well, I don't know. There may be a lot of personnel changes this year, so we'll see. You know,
I
but anyway, let's go back to sports card.
Talk to me about what it's like being a part of the community now. So, I mean, obviously you're a little bit removed, not too far removed, but
Right.
um, are there ever instances where you want to jump back in? Are there things where you're like, I really wish I had an opportunity to fix this? Uh, talk to me about, yeah, what's it like seeing how far you've come? I mean, even with the cup, man, it's like we're almost at 20 years too next year, right? Like,
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
2 years from now, 25, 25, 26. Yeah, 2 years from now. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, that's almost 2 decades. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
how are you feeling 2 decades later?
So the last product I built was back at Panini in 2014, I believe. So it's almost 10 years since I built my last product, and I do miss it, especially when the audience is a lot bigger, the community is huge, and seeing talking to these Grail collectors, and a lot of them are going, "Hey, Karvin, we're going back to collecting your cards, right?" And I was like, "Man, I really wish I can deliver something again back for the hobby." And partaking in the community is important. Like the one thing I will say is that it could be sometimes, man, you're working at Upper Deck or you're working at a manufacturer, and you're fighting with people like hard sign autographs, photo shoot slash game use. These are just some of the battles we have, or the designs. Going back to a graphic designer saying you didn't hit the mark and having to fight that battle and correcting it, or seeing collation issues, all this stuff. So when you're in the building creating the ideas, yeah, that's great. When you're brainstorming, being creative, when you put pen to paper and come up with some sort of document where everyone follows, they don't always have the same idea that you're thinking. At the end of the day, that's why I call myself the architect, is that I just have the idea, try to execute it, but execution doesn't take where I go. I just hand off a document, and then the graphic designers, the operations team, all those guys handle it. I still have a say in terms of the kind of the design I want to see, but I can't say to the designer, I want this and this, and be behind their shoulder and say, design this card to exactly what I want to see. And the sad part is that sometimes what I want to see is exactly what we did last year. So I don't want that to happen either. So you got to let them have creative freedom in terms of designing a card that you want to see. And then, you got to build that relationship amongst the company. But the one thing I'll say is that whenever I go to a show and I see collectors, when I go to the expo, the fall expo or the spring expo, that's probably the most attended show I went to, because the national was always like around August, and we always had a show in May. It was called Sports Fest back then. So we had our distributor meetings in May at Sports Fest. But just walking around, talking to the dealers, talking to collectors, especially the collectors, um, it just reinvigorizes me, right? It just gives me that energy. I'm now motivated. I'm like, man, I want to deliver something new, man. These guys are
Yeah.
so excited. When you see the results of some of the products and putting smiles on people's faces, then you're like, man, I gotta bring something back. And that's where I am with 10 years being away. And the one thing I think we discussed about this when Jeremy Lee asked me at the expo, saying, hey, well, what ideas would you have for Bedard? Like, obviously, I'm not going to expose a lot of my ideas.
Yeah.
But at the same time, whenever I build a product, I'm always thinking the evergreen process, right? So what am I going to do next year? Knowing that this year is a Bedard year, well, you better have a lot of aces up your sleeve for the next following year that people want to continue to buy products without a Bedard, right? So same thing would happen with LeBron, and same thing happened with Crosby / Ovechkin, those banner years, those generational talents. So I always will have something up my sleeve. And the one thing I will say is that being away for 10 years and seeing how the hobbies change and how people like certain things, I got crazy ideas. The ideas are in there. Are they expensive? Some of them could be pretty expensive to do, but if I ever come back and create products, I think it's going to create a whole new uproar and something people collect. So, because with the experience, with age and looking at different things outside of trading cards has given me a new perspective on innovation. So
You hear
I think
that,
there's some
companies? Karvin's ready to rock, man. We gotta, we gotta get this guy
always.
back. I love that. And I want to give you some the opportunity. Just the floor is yours. Just let us know where to find you. Maybe what opportunities you're looking for. If anyone wants to contact you directly, where that could happen.
Yeah, and obviously the best way probably to find me right now is on Instagram. Instagram is at Karvin 15, or just look under my name, but my name's not spelled with C, it's with a K. So Karvin is my name, and I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere. So uh, one of the best ways to find me is on Instagram. You can DM me. Obviously, if I don't follow you, it'll come up as a message somewhere else, and I'll have to, I will look at my inbox quite a bit for DMs. I get quite a bit from collectors, from other people. So that's one way to contact me. Uh, just anywhere, like at the fall expo, if I'm there, come up to me and you want talk shop and all that. That's great. There are some huge opportunities out there. I have some $1 billion companies reach out to me and say, hey, we want to work out maybe a division that you can do something. I've had individual companies come up and hey, we want to do maybe some cards of our certain stable of people, whether it's celebrities, whether it's musicians. Obviously, I did the card for the weekend. There's other opportunities out there outside of the big four sports, but obviously having the audience on the sports will be key, right? So that's something that I love to be able to dip my toes back in and hopefully shock the hobby again. But at the end of the day, it's all about the hobby. It's about the collectors. It's about the people partaking in the hobby. Without them, I'm just everyone else, right? And I am everyone else. I'm just a collector, right? So I'm glad that everyone appreciates those brands, appreciates the cards, but it is them who makes those cards what they are, not me.
I love that, and that's such a wonderful sentiment to end this thing off on. Karvin, I want to thank you so much again for jumping on the podcast. Team, you have to go follow this guy. I mean, out of just straight notoriety and just what he's done for the hobby in general. Thanks again. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Cardboard Coach featuring Karvin Cheung. Team, drop him a follow, hit him up, ask him some questions yourself. Let us know in the comment section what your favorite part or what your favorite part to hear about was. And for now, Coach Co and Karvin Cheung are out of here. Peace.